Hey, what's going on, you guys? It's Aces High, and today we're going to be continuing our Apollo program. So, I told you in the first part, I'm beyond stoked. I love aviation, absolutely love it. My dad was a jet engine mechanic in the Air Force before he worked for, I don't know if I'm allowed to say companies, but it's a very large American plane builder. And then I got a job there. Two of my uncles were pilots. I've been all around aviation most of my life, and I've always loved it. That being said, space intrigues the hell out of me. So if I can combine the two, that would be the Apollo program. That would be everything coming up to like SpaceX and things today. And just, I love all of that. So we're going to continue and watch the second part of Epic History TV's Apollo program, part 2. This one's titled One Giant Leap. And I think we all remember that line from Neil Armstrong. So yeah, let's watch it. God, I love that line.
1961. At the height of the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union, cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin became the first man in space. Just weeks later, the United States launched its first astronaut, Alan Shepard.
5 cabin, oxygen go, all systems are go.
He was welcomed home as a hero. But President John F. Kennedy knew that if the United States was to overtake the Soviet space program, it needed a bolder mission.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
As Kennedy addressed Congress, the United States had just 15 minutes of human spaceflight experience. No one knew if a moon landing was even possible, let alone in just 9 years. It would be an unprecedented engineering and scientific undertaking, marked by heroism and tragedy. The incredible task of landing an astronaut on the moon would be known as the Apollo program.
Sorry, you guys, I know I could have skipped that intro because it was at the beginning of the last video too, but it is just such a cool intro. It has one of my favorite presidents, JFK. It has everything about the Apollo program, about reaching new heights and humans just progressing, and just, it's such a cool intro.
The Apollo program had been rocked by the tragic death of Apollo 1 astronauts Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee.
Yeah.
But it had recovered with the brilliant success of Apollo 7, the first crewed test of the Command and Service Module. And in 1968, after 7 years of intense research and development, NASA had flown 3 astronauts 240,000 miles from home and into lunar orbit. Apollo 8 flew within 69 miles of the moon's surface, but crossing that final gap would be the greatest challenge of the Apollo program. It would require a completely new and untested type of spacecraft, the Lunar Module. This video is sponsored by
Let's go and
Curiosity
skip all
Stream.
this. Oh, that was pretty good on the click. Looking back, we were the luckiest people in the world. There was no choice but to be the pioneers, no time to be beginners. Margaret H. Hamilton, Apollo software engineer. How cool would that be? Also, in the 60s, having a woman as a software engineer, that was very, very progressive. Good on her. Seriously.
In the wake of Apollo 8's daring journey to the moon, Apollo 9 received much less public attention. The mission wasn't even going to leave Earth orbit. But within the astronaut corps, the first crewed flight of the Lunar Module was seen as an even more exciting challenge. The mission's commander, Jim McDivitt, had actually turned down the chance to fly to the moon on Apollo 8, choosing Apollo 9 instead. Like many Apollo astronauts, he was a former test pilot, and this was a chance to test a brand new flying machine.
Okay.
2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have liftoff at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Before the test flight of the Lunar Module could begin, the crew had a challenging docking maneuver to perform. The Lunar Module was folded inside the upper stage of the Saturn V rocket and needed to be extracted using the command and service module.
Okay.
Roger, Houston, we're about 25 feet now on the closing course. All right, Houston, we're hard back. Good show.
Leaving Command Module pilot Dave Scott to fly the CSM, McDivitt and Lunar Module pilot Rusty Schweikert climbed aboard and undocked. The Lunar Module was the first true spaceship designed only to fly in the vacuum of space. Its insect-like body was designed without the constraints of aerodynamics, but every panel, bolt and button had to be as light as possible, so the craft could lift itself off the moon's surface. McDivitt said that it looked like cellophane and tinfoil put together with scotch tape and staples.
It does. It looks like a fifth grader's art project or something.
He gave his craft the call sign Spider. Unlike the command module, Spider did not have a heat shield, so it would burn up if it tried to re-enter Earth's atmosphere. So, if the astronauts couldn't re-dock with the command module after their test flight, they would have no way of returning home. But Spider's test flight went perfectly. McDivitt and Schweikert flew the Lunar Module over 100 miles from the command module. They tested the ascent and descent engines and returned for a safe rendezvous. The Lunar Module was ready to fly to the moon.
Apollo 10. Very cool. So they're getting ready, man. What did Apollo 10
NASA
do?
had successfully tested both the command module and Lunar Module and made a trip around the moon. Many hoped the next mission would attempt the first moon landing. But NASA needed more experience in communications and tracking two separate spacecraft in lunar orbit, plus the challenges of rendezvous and docking in the moon's weaker gravity. And there was another critical unknown. In 1968, NASA scientists discovered that the moon has a highly uneven gravitational field.
Really?
This is caused by huge lumps of high-density material in its crust, known as mass concentrations, or mascons, which could exert an uneven pull on a spacecraft and throw it off course. Before it was safe to attempt a landing, NASA would need to learn more about the mascons by examining their effect on another Apollo flight. Apollo 10 would be a dress rehearsal for the first landing attempt, flying every part of the mission except for the final descent to the surface.
Wow.
The Apollo 10 crew was Commander Tom Stafford, Command Module pilot John Young, and Lunar Module pilot Gene Cernan. All three men were veterans of the Gemini program, and with 5 missions between them, they were the most experienced crew ever sent into space.
Really?
Stafford and Cernan flew the Lunar Module to within 9 miles of the moon's surface. Their successful flight proved every phase of the mission, except for the final descent. Now, everything was in place. It was time to attempt the landing.
There it is.
Apollo 11 would be commanded by Neil Armstrong, a brilliant engineer and test pilot. Early in his NASA career, he'd flown the experimental X-15 rocket plane, up to an altitude of 207,000 feet, at speeds of almost 4,000 miles per hour. When he joined the space program as part of NASA's second astronaut group, he was one of the few astronauts to be offered a command on his first mission, Gemini 8. Gemini 8 achieved the first docking of 2 spacecraft in orbit. But the mission almost ended in disaster when a faulty maneuvering thruster caused the Gemini capsule to spin wildly. Armstrong's calm and swift piloting brought the spacecraft under control, and although the mission was cut short, He'd proved his almost superhuman ability to remain calm under pressure.
Huh.
Joining him as Lunar Module pilot was Buzz Aldrin, a graduate.
You know, is this is gonna sound stupid, but so I've heard the story. Buzz Aldrin was supposed to be the first person on the moon. I've heard this plenty of times. I've never actually done any research on it, but basically, having Neil Armstrong as the commander, you don't want to lose your commander type thing. So Buzz was supposed to be the first man on the moon. However, they got down there, checked everything, it seemed alright, and they decided Neil was gonna go. Is the story I've heard. I don't know if that's true or not. That being said, though, years later, I've also heard that Buzz Aldrin was the first man to pee on the moon, like to pee inside his suit, you know. So, is that true? Does anybody know that? Let me know. All right.
Of MIT, Aldrin wrote his doctoral thesis on piloting techniques for orbital rendezvous, and had an extraordinary understanding of orbital mechanics. He'd proven his expertise on Gemini 12. When the spacecraft's rendezvous radar malfunctioned, he was able to compute the orbital maneuvers himself and guide the capsule to a successful docking with an unmanned target rocket. The command module pilot was Michael Collins. He would remain aboard the command module whilst...
So he was on, Apollo 8? And wasn't he actually the one that took the picture of Earth on Apollo 8? Or am I mistaking him with someone else?
Armstrong and Aldrin descended to the moon.
Oh no, Gemini 10. Okay, maybe
he had
not.
no regrets about his assignment, telling reporters that he was going 99.9% of the way there, and that was...
I think I'd be excited, but I'd be very disappointed if I was Mike Collins. You're not going to be the first people to touch down the moon. You're never going to touch down the moon, probably, unless you're on a later mission.
Fine with him. But years later, he would recount his greatest fear, that Armstrong and Aldrin would be stranded on the surface, leaving him to travel back to Earth alone.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The 15th of July, 1969. Almost 1 million people were gathering at Cape Kennedy to watch the 3 astronauts fly to the moon. But not everyone was there to celebrate.
A rat done bit my sister Nell with Whitey on the moon. Her face and arms began to swell and Whitey's on the moon. What? The hell is that?
As launch preparations were made, around 150 people, mostly African-American mothers and their children, arrived at Cape Kennedy to protest the launch. They were led by the Reverend Ralph Abernathy, who had succeeded Dr. Martin Luther King as leader of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference after King's assassination the previous year. Their message was simple. It was inhuman to spend billions of dollars sending men to the moon, while 1 in 5 Americans lacked proper food, shelter, and health care.
I mean, he makes a pretty damn good point. Think about how much money we spent and what really came out of it, you know? I mean, a lot came out of all of our studies in space and just we're learning more scientifically. And don't get me wrong, I got my degree in biochemistry and I definitely respect science and I love it and I love space, but I mean, he kind of has a point.
NASA Administrator Thomas Paine met with the protesters the evening before the launch. He told Abernathy that if we could solve the problems of poverty by not pushing the button to launch men to the moon tomorrow, then we would not push that button. Their terse meeting resolved nothing, but it ended with a handshake and a promise by Abernathy that he would pray for the safe flight of the astronauts. The following day, 10 of the protesters were invited into the VIP stands to watch the launch of Apollo 11.
Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
There it is. There it goes.
4 days later, on the 20th of July, Armstrong and Aldrin climbed into their lunar module, call sign Eagle, and began their descent to the lunar surface.
The Eagle has wings.
Years of hard work and training had led to this moment. The descent to the lunar surface would test their skills to the very limit. Back on Earth, in Houston, Texas, the staff of Mission Control watched as Eagle passed behind the moon for a final time. They monitored every system in both spacecraft and guided the astronauts through the complex flight plan. And the success of the mission was about to rest on the shoulders of 26-year-old guidance officer Steve Bales.
1202, standing by. 1202.
The master alarm sounded in the lunar module cockpit. Eagle's guidance computer was trying to tell the astronauts that something was wrong. Its simple display showed the numbers 1202, but neither Armstrong or Aldrin knew what this meant.
Reading on the 1202 program alarm.
Flight Director Gene Kranz was seconds away from calling an abort. He turned to Bales for answers. 1202 meant the guidance computer was overloaded. It had too many tasks to complete in its computing cycle, and was dropping some in order to continue functioning. Without a working guidance computer, the astronauts would have to abort. But the alarm wasn't sounding continuously. This meant that most computational cycles were being completed properly. Bales decided that as long as the problem was only intermittent, the landing could continue.
We're going that flight. If it doesn't reoccur, we'll be go.
But then, another problem. The lunar module was approaching the surface too fast, and had overshot its intended landing site. Now the computer was guiding them towards a massive, football stadium-sized crater, surrounded by a field of car-sized boulders. With the lunar module almost out of fuel, Armstrong took manual control. Mission Control could only watch. The landing rested on Armstrong's piloting skills.
I didn't know that he took manual control so early, you know?
60 seconds. Lights on. 4 forward, drift to the right a little. Down a half. 30 seconds forward drift. Contact light.
Say it.
Quality base here. The Eagle has landed.
There it is. There it is. That's such a good line. Oh my God, that's history right there. Imagine. And some of you guys said that you commented that you have seen this, that you watched it back on your TV in black and white, way back. You know, what is that, 50 years ago? Holy crap, man! I can only imagine. You know, I mean, I'm pushing 30, so I mean, it was 20 years before I was born.
As around 600 million people watched from Earth, Armstrong took his first steps on the lunar surface.
That's one small step for man. One giant leap for mankind.
The precisely choreographed moonwalk had taken 2 years to plan. For 2 hours and 40 minutes, Armstrong and Aldrin gathered rock samples, set up scientific experiments, and took photographs.
Could you imagine? Maybe, wow, what a shot. Maybe one day I'll get to go to space, but Jesus Christ, just could you imagine?
The Apollo 11 crew returned home as heroes. Their names now amongst those of the greatest explorers in history.
Yeah. We feel that this stands as a symbol of the insatiable curiosity of all mankind to explore the unknown. Buzz Aldrin. That's a man that, like, I would love to meet.
Now that President Kennedy's goal had been accomplished, Was there any point in returning to the moon? What was left for the Apollo program to achieve? The new mission would be science. The moon's origins remained a mystery. Where did it come from? Could its scarred surface tell the story of the early solar system, and in turn, help us understand the origins of our own world? But although NASA now possessed the knowledge and technology to land on the moon, it would soon receive a powerful reminder of the dangers of spaceflight.
How is that? It's got to be Apollo 13.
We got more than a problem.
Thank you to...
Wait, what? That's it? There's got to be a part 3, right? Oh my god, okay, well, I guess that's it, you guys. I'll see if there's a part 3, but I don't think there is. I'm looking right now. If there's a part 3, let me know, but I don't see it. It really just ended after Apollo 11? Is he still making part 3? When did this come out? Oh wow, this came out in April. They are probably still working on part 3, so when part 3 comes out, we'll watch it. It's got to be, Apollo 12, Apollo 13. Everybody knows that story. And then 14, 15, 16, and 17. That's, wow, yeah, okay. Cool. Well, hope you guys enjoyed it. Till next time, this is Ace Asai. Love y'all. I'm out.